Hi everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about your first team project, which is the team charter. So here's where you're going to find it under week 1. Scroll down. You're going to want to download this. So you click that little button right there, hit download and save it to your desktop. And then you're going to want to open this up and then do all of your edits in the Word document. Okay, so this is a pretty important assignment. Mainly because it gets you off on the right foot with your teammates, right? It gives you a chance to get to know each other. It gives you a chance to talk about your strengths and your weaknesses. Also, when we're thinking about business, we always consider, writing a contract, right? Even if we're working with our friends, maybe especially if we're working with friends, we're going to want to put a contract together. And a contract really says, this is what we all agree to before we start on this project. And, this is what happens when we don't do what we say we're going to do. There are consequences, and we've already written it down. And, this gives you a document to go back to if there are issues in your team. And hopefully, if we do this right, there won't be any issues in your team. So, that's really the whole point of this. It gives you a chance to, as a team, to be in charge of how you want your team to be run. So, a lot of these little sections are blank, but I'm going to describe them to you a little bit. And then, of course, you have the freedom to fill them in as best as possible. So here we go. First off, of course, this is the team member section. I'm hoping that you've reached out to one another and you've had a chance to get to know phone numbers if you want to do a text, like a group text or something, email addresses. There are other ways you can contact each other is through, Google Hangouts or Zoom. Anyway, so you can just write this in this section, people's, contact info in case somebody needs to reach out to somebody within the group. Okay, and then roles and contributions. I only wrote this little section under the project manager, but I want every single person to fill this out. So by Friday, you should have a project manager chosen. And then, of course, each team member is going to write the responses for themselves. And basically, you'll answer these questions. What do you bring to the table? Tell your group about your skill sets that could be helpful to the group. And list some skills that you might like to work on this term. Okay. Then the next section, of course, is an itemized list of times and dates for assignments. I actually have a calendar that's attached at the very end, and I'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at that in just a minute. But basically, this is kind of a reminder to each other. I know that we don't really have an actual class that we meet in every week, but there are assignments that are due throughout the term and some things you're going to want to connect with as a group. And this might be a good chance to talk to each other about any upcoming trips, like you might have a business trip or something that's coming up in the future that, hey, just so you know that this is happening and maybe people can, your group can kind of schedule around it. Okay. So ground rules, this is really, really important. Here are some questions that can help you create your ground rules. But, some places to begin, of course, are like, what do you expect from each other? And, how and when do you want to turn in group assignments? I think that's a really important one. A lot of groups that have been very successful in the past, a lot of them have internal due dates. So let's say our assignments are due like Sunday night. So a lot of times they will have an internal, deadline within the group that everything needs to be done on Friday night, so that it gives whoever's going to edit the last final day to do that and then turn it in. You might want to have that little conversation about how that happens, so there's no question about when is your stuff due to the other team members, who's going to look it over finally, who's going to actually turn it in, that sort of thing. Okay. What kind of methods of communication will you use? That's another big thing that you should probably have a conversation on. And as I mentioned before, Google Hangouts, or there's so many free things out there that you guys can use to chat with one another. So talk about that. Doesn't have to be necessarily within the D2L forum or anything like that. You can use whatever you want. Okay, now this is another thing that's kind of interesting, and I think it's important, right? Because we can't just lay down ground rules and say, okay, well, there are the rules, and let's just hope everyone follows them. It doesn't always work like that. If we write this charter well, and we write the ground rules and performance penalties correctly, and we put a lot of thought into it, then we won't actually have to use them, hopefully. We won't actually have to worry about the penalties, but we do want to make sure we put some effort into this penalty situation. So how do you want to handle issues with breaking the above rules that you've agreed to? Generally it's the PM that reaches out to people when things aren't going well. Um, I would say as a suggestion, it's, maybe do something that's a little bit in line with what you would see at work, which is, the boss or the PM would reach out and just say, hey, to that person that's not doing what they're supposed to be doing. See if there's something going on, if there's something wrong. Generally, people aren't trying to do something wrong on purpose, or not trying to, participate on purpose. There's something going on. Just to have a check-in with that person. If it becomes a consistent, a persistent problem, then maybe it would be something that you could talk to with them, in an email, maybe like a written email that CCs the instructor on it to say, hey, we already talked about this and this is still becoming a problem. You're not participating in blah, 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 or you didn't contribute to the assignment. Of course, when you CC me on it, that gives me an indication of something is going on. And then maybe a third strike would be, something like some kind of conference or email correspondence or something like that with me, that where I could maybe have a conversation with that person and maybe step in and see if there was something else that we could do to make things better for the group. So anyway, so those are just suggestions. It's up to you how you want to handle this. Okay. Of course, come up with some kind of goals. What are your goals? Is it to get an A, or you're just happy with the B? Or are there some specific communication goals that you want to reach? That might be something to talk about. What are some barriers to achieving these goals? And then what are your team values? Of course, what is your desired end result? Okay, so those are the basic little pieces of your team charter. It's not super complicated, but I would say that the most important things, of course, are just speak to one another, to communicate to one another about your strengths and weaknesses. Of course, any issues that might come up in the future, and really to think about those ground rules and to focus on your performance penalties. Okay, and now at the bottom, I've created a little calendar for you. This is up to you. You don't have to fill this in as part of as part of your turned in assignment. I just made it so that you could use it if you wanted to. The other parts, yes, please fill those out. That's what I'm grading you on. This part is really for you. So you could actually just copy this and like maybe save it somewhere or use it for your own, internal use. But really, wouldn't be a bad idea to put in when assignments are due, and when things are due internally, or that sort of thing, or when we're having a little conference with one another, right? Group chat happening on Wednesday or something like that. Okay, that's it. That's all I have for you in this document. Okay, send me questions if you have any, and any comments. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.